Welcome to another episode of the Almost Awakened podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bill Reel.
And I am Teresa Hobbs.
And today we're going to have a conversation about how to handle those tricky family situations. You know the ones. You're in Scientology, or at least you were. You were part of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe you were a Mormon. And now here you've got Thanksgiving coming up this week, Christmas in the not too far distant future. And you're going to be sitting with family, maybe friends, people who are still in the faith and you're out. Maybe you're in and they're out. So let's have a conversation today about how to handle those tricky situations. And Teresa, I'm going to run us through 10 ideas that we've come up with on how to create some boundaries for ourselves, for others, ways that we want to show up, things that we need to think about and sort of plot out before we just show up at these events. And these are the ideas that are going to help us to encounter these moments that are going to happen. We hear about them every year where people are sitting at the Thanksgiving dinner and grandma or Uncle Tom can't bite their tongue, and they decide to say something that completely counters how we're different than them, and the fact that we've left a religion and they're still in. And these conversations can get tricky. And there are things that are said that often create distance in relationships or frustration or anger. And I think it's important that we go over these things because this will save a lot of heartache and headaches for people who are getting ready to go to an event where there is believing and non-believing family there. And people are going to say things, people are going to share things. And this is a chance to be prepared to avoid that. Any thoughts from you before I jump in?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a hot topic for people. And I know so many people who dread the holidays. They start to get anxiety about 3 weeks before Thanksgiving because they're, already feeling the tension about what's going to happen with family members and who's going to say what and, how they're going to defend themselves. And so people start the holidays already armored. And, and then they have to do a second round with Christmas a lot of times. And so this, I think, will be really good advice for not just people who have, mixed faith families, but also people who just struggle with family members. So I hope that it gives people some things to think about and just a few tools to kind of make this an easier transition.
Yeah, I think this will do just that. So let me start with number one. Decide who you're going to be before you walk in. When you step into a familiar house, those old roles start tugging at you. It's amazing how quickly you can slip back into being the kid, the peacemaker, the explainer, the apologizer. So before you even walk in, choose who you want to show up as this year. Maybe the grounded adult, maybe the curious observer, maybe the version of you that can offer compassion without losing yourself, but not the teenager defending every choice or trying to win approval. If you decide your identity ahead of time, you'll stay steadier. You'll react less. You'll show up on purpose instead of getting dragged around by old patterns. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this one is actually the most important of all of them. And this has helped me in situations with my own family. And it's interesting because I think what happens for a lot of people, especially in, again, mixed faith families, is that the person who chooses to step away from the religion or the system, whatever it is, they feel so blamed and shamed, right? And it's very typical in high demand religions where the other family members who are still believers are going to perceive the non-believers a certain way, whether they're concerned about their salvation or they think that they're evil or bad or whatever it is. You cannot fix other people's judgments. Like, you just can't. And I think what happens is sometimes, we will wish desperately that we can just be accepted as who we are. We'll show up in those interactions hoping that we're going to get something from our family members, and then it doesn't come, and so then we feel really frustrated and angry and defensive, and we feel like we've, failed that interaction or whatever it is. And then what we'll do is we'll also blame the other person. And so one thing that I think is really helpful here is to recognize, like, to get really, really clear with yourself and recognize that, like, you stepping away from this system, whatever it was, is truly okay, regardless of what somebody else thinks. Own your truth. Let it be okay that they may think and believe otherwise. That does not take your truth away. That does not change who you are. Their belief ultimately doesn't have power over you. And so if you can get really, really clear on that before you even show up in the space and give those people permission to be who they are. Now that doesn't mean like you give people permission to be abusive or really hurtful or whatever. Like there's a line there, right? But if you just have well-meaning people who are going to say a few comments here and there or aren't going to fully understand your experiences, maybe that's okay, and anyway. So one thing I was sharing with you earlier today is I struggled so much with my own family because I really wanted them to see me a certain way and I wanted them to interact with me a certain way, and they just couldn't. And I felt horrible every time I'd go to the family interactions, any family event. I would leave feeling unseen, frustrated, all this kind of stuff. And then there was a moment where I just realized, like, what if how they show up isn't necessarily wrong? It's not aligning with me. It's not how I wish it would be. But I stopped the judgment from my side, and I stopped expecting them to be different than they were. And I went into those interactions and I just observed. Like one of the things in here is it says, can you just be the curious observer? And so that's what I did. I just sat there and I was a curious observer, and I let people be who they were, changed everything for me. Suddenly I started to recognize that, like, I really liked my family. I could accept them as they were, and I really didn't need them to give me or validate me in the ways that I was desperately wanting. I started giving that to myself instead. And it made those interactions so much better and somehow like took the pressure off. And I feel like there was a shift even in my family with how they treated me. Like there was just it was lighter, it was easier. And I started to appreciate them in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thought that came to mind for me is this idea that if you don't think about this beforehand, you and everyone else in that house will fall into the roles that they've always filled.
Yeah.
So when you show up as the kid, the parent, the cousin, the aunt, the uncle, the nephew, the niece, you're going to immediately be treated as if you're 15 years old again in that family system. And the only way that pattern breaks, because if they show up the way they're going to, they don't have this preparation. They're not putting a lot of time and thought probably into how they handle these situations and be more compassionate towards those who have left the religion, for instance. Because they're not thinking about it, they're going to have very natural reactions that play on the way these family structures are embedded. These are the ways that you guys have done things all of your lives. And so when it says it's easy to slip back into being the kid, the peacekeeper, the explainer, the apologizer, they're going to say the thing they've always said that's triggered you to then react and respond the way you always have. And now you fall right back into the cycle. And so the only way that you're going to break that pattern is that you put some thought into this situation before you walk in that door, and you have it clear in your own head how you're going to show up. Now, I'll say that also, you ought to give yourself some grace. Our families, the people we love and we spent years and years of our life with, intentionally or unintentionally know which buttons to push. And so even if you follow all the things in the list that we're going to go over and you really feel like you've got a great hold on this, give yourself some grace, because it may not and probably won't go perfectly.
No, it won't, because the other people are going to play the roles they always play, but you get to decide who you are, and you get to decide how their behavior lands in you. And a lot of times the reason why we get so defensive or so reactive is because it lands somewhere. It somehow we allow it to permeate our internal boundaries. And that's because on some level, we either feel like we're doing something wrong, or we're desperately wanting something from that person that they maybe can't give. And so there's something to just accepting that, like, okay, this is who they are. It is what it is. I may never get what I need from them, but can I just accept them where they are in this moment and have whatever level of connection I feel is appropriate or I feel is okay. And one thing I also want to say as we sort of talk about this list of things is you may have family that you choose never to engage with. you may decide that they're not worth engaging, and that's okay. Like that, there are certain dynamics that sometimes feel completely unmanageable. And so if it feels better for you and your family not to engage there, then give yourself permission not to go at all.
Yep, totally. I love that. Number two, set internal boundaries, not just external ones. A lot of people think boundaries are about getting others to change, but the real power is in the internal boundaries that you set for yourself. Ask yourself, what will I do if someone crosses my line? How will I take care of myself afterward? Answer those questions and you stop waiting for people to magically behave. You give yourself a plan, and that puts the control back in your hands. Your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Such a big one. And I was really confused about boundaries for a long time because a lot of people think like a boundary is like a punishment for somebody else's behavior. And it's almost like, what parents do with their kids. Like, if you did that one more time, I'm going to take your toys away or whatever it is. But that's not really a boundary. That's a threat, really. So boundaries are about your behavior, what you're going to do in response to somebody else's behavior, because you can't control other people's behavior. So boundaries are really never about trying to control somebody else's behavior. They're about how you're going to respond to somebody else's behavior. And they help you to feel a sense of safety. So if you think ahead of a time, like if such and such happens, like these are my boundaries. If people show up and behave in this way, this will be my response. Sometimes internal boundaries can also be about just recognizing that somebody else's behavior isn't about you, right? So my internal boundary is that, like, I don't let that permeate me because I know who I am, and that person's criticism or their judgment has nothing to do with me. And so I don't let it land in my system. So being able to get really clear about that ahead of time, and planning for really inappropriate behavior from people, and deciding how you're going to manage that. If somebody does say something that's inappropriate, being able to sort of disengage or walk away or call them out on it in a way that doesn't escalate. There are lots of different phrases that you can sort of prepare ahead of time to be able to respond to people.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to this one is, and you sort of hit on this, it's easy to set, it's not easy. It's difficult to set boundaries. Boundaries are a tough thing. But
Yeah.
once you understand boundaries, I think it's much easier to set an external boundary with somebody. Uncle Joe is always passive aggressive, so these are my lines, and I've informed Uncle Joe that if he wants to have a relationship with me, these are the lines he's not allowed to cross. And if he does, in order for me to take care of myself, I'm going to do this. It's another thing to set an internal boundary where someone says something they shouldn't have, somebody does something they shouldn't have, and now you're triggered. You're not in that grounded space in your head. You are in lizard brain, and it is so easy for you now to react to the thing they shouldn't have done. And internal boundaries are about, when I get triggered, when things happen that I didn't see coming, and I'm caught off guard, and I'm sent into lizard brain, what am I going to do in those moments so that this doesn't turn into the same pattern that's happened 100 times before? And I think internal boundaries are much more difficult, um, because you're getting caught off guard by the thing that shouldn't have happened, and it's so natural to just react to that. We humans have been reacting to these things for a million years. And so here's a moment where you really do need to put some prep into this beforehand and have a conversation with yourself about what your internal boundaries are going to be, because as you pointed out, you can't control the other person.
No. And I've had some family members in my life who they just couldn't help themselves. They had to tell you the critical comment all the time. It was always like passive aggressive sort of add-on, and it would just sting. And there was a time that I had to sort of disconnect and put some distance between some family members. And now I feel like I've gotten clear enough with who I am and who they are and why they do what they do, right? I realize, like, that's just their thing. They don't really see themselves. They don't have enough self-awareness, whatever it is. But I think it would, like, they could say whatever they wanted to say today, and I don't think it would land the same way, because I know who I am, and I know that their criticisms are just their own stuff. So that's helpful to me, but sometimes you have to really sit with it. You have to sort of like move through the inner wound that you have there, because the reason why it hurts so much is because when people say things is because there's still a wound there, or there's some part of you that doesn't feel okay with it.
Yeah, there's this phrase called offending from the victim position. I did this recently with a family member when I had family come to visit me a couple of months ago. And it is so easy to know that someone in your life that you love and care about, and you wish that they showed up a certain way, you wish they showed up in a healthy, responsible way, and they don't. They just don't. They don't do it. And you're expecting them to do that. And the moment they show up not giving you what they should be able to give, but they just aren't able. And so they show up unhealthy. They show up in ways that are just deeply disconnecting from you or for you. It's easy to, as the victim, to start berating that person in some way or assaulting them in some way. And I use that term loosely, but assaulting them in some way that is offending them from the victim position. Like, you're a victim, so you get to go over the top and make them pay for this thing that they did. And I just will note, one of the internal boundaries I highly suggest is that when you are met with behaviors or words that shouldn't have been said and shouldn't have been done, that you not escalate things to the point where you're making an example of them and making them pay an even larger price because you've been hurt, and now you feel like it's your right to now hurt them back in some serious sense. Anyway, I would be very careful of offending from the victim position. As one who's done that before, I had to read up on what that meant and what that looks like, and then to have an aha moment and go like, oh, I'm the jerk doing that. Yes, I am the victim in a sense. I got treated in a way that was not right. But now I'm making it way bigger than it needed to be, and I'm making that person pay a price that's higher than what the situation calls for. And I think I have a right to do so because I'm the victim, when in fact I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3, have a few exit lines ready. Holiday conversations can wander into places that you don't want to go. So instead of freezing or snapping, have a few lines ready. Things like, let's save this for another time. Or, quote, I love you too much to debate this today. Or perhaps, I'm here to connect, not to convince. But have some phrases that have rehearsed in your mind that will help you when the situation does catch you off guard and you weren't expecting it. You now have a plan in place. Your thoughts?
I think these are great. I love I'm here to connect, not to convince. If somebody's asking you intrusive questions or trying to get into some sort of either political or religious debate, that's a great one to go to. And if you just have a few phrases put together, because people know their families, right? You kind of know what you're going to be walking into. So if you can prep ahead and just have some great exit statements put together, you can go in feeling a lot more protected, or a little bit more settled, because you kind of know what to expect and you know how to respond.
Yeah, and we'll talk about exiting the experience altogether. What this is talking about is just exiting that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to change the conversation up so that that person doesn't get to keep pushing in the direction that they are, and I get to move on to something else and allow Thanksgiving to still be Thanksgiving, Christmas to still be Christmas, without the passive aggressiveness of grandma or Uncle Joe or mom and dad or whoever it is in your family that does those things. And I think by having those things ready, as you point out, you have a hunch of what kind of conversations usually come up that create tension in the family dynamic. But there also may be things that catch you off guard. And the cool thing about having a bunch of these sort of lines ready is they can apply to a multitude of circumstances. The ability to say, let's save that for another time, is a great one, no matter what the conversation is. And what it also does is it lets you, after Christmas is over, everybody's gone back to their homes and you have some time to just sit and reflect. Now you can reach out, having processed what happened and having had a chance to de-escalate your own emotional feelings around it. You get to come back and make a phone call or send a text message that approaches the conversation they wanted to, but if you want to, but from a perspective of, I've had time to think about this. Here's how I want to attack this conversation in a way that is responsible for me and has my inner boundaries being set. So I think these lines can work in a multitude of places, both the ones you expect and the ones that maybe you get caught off guard with. All right, number 4, choose connection over correction. You don't need to fix anyone's beliefs at Thanksgiving. It's not the time. It's not the place. And frankly, it never works. And by the way, that's true for them too. They shouldn't be trying to fix your beliefs at Thanksgiving. It's not the time. It's not the place. And frankly, it never works. When you remind yourself that the goal today is connection, not conversion, everything shifts. You listen differently, you respond differently, and you stop looking for opportunities to teach people who didn't ask to be taught. Your thought?
Yeah, I think that's a great one. And again, that's just an intention you go in with. Like if you recognize that, a lot, again, because we have this history of how things have played out, some people can be rehearsing like, what they're going to say or what kinds of, I don't know. Again, we have this idea that we want to sort of like get our needs met. We want to be heard. We want to be listened to. We want sometimes to feel like we can convince other people. And this happens in political conversations all the time too, right? Where you see somebody and their beliefs and you just think they're absolutely dead wrong and they're off their rock or whatever. But you're never going to convince the other person. It's so polarizing. And so if you can go in with the idea of like, we're all human beings, we're here to connect. This is the intention of this experience. And that's where I'm going to stay focused on. That can be so helpful. And this happened a lot in, again, my family. We had different political beliefs. And so like conversations would sometimes get heated. And when there were conversations around politics, I would kind of get up and step away. Or I would go and interact with somebody else who wasn't involved in that conversation, whatever it was, just because I didn't want to feed into it. And I didn't want to get tempted to get drawn into the conversation and throw out my ideas because I knew it wasn't going to help anyway. So,
yeah. And when I see this line, and we mentioned it earlier as one of the things that you could say, but it's this idea that my goal today is connection, not conversion. And that's a great one if we're the ones who are leading the conversation and our brain tells us to ask some question that sort of pokes at them. And we can just quickly go like, hey, my goal today is just to enjoy my family or my friends or whatever it is here at Thanksgiving or at Christmas. And my goal today is not to convert anybody to my side of ideas. Let's just enjoy each other's company. What you can't plan on is that the other person doesn't have that filter. Mm-hmm. And so they show up saying something that is meant to make you feel shame or guilt about not being in the church, meant to make the conversation focus on those who did that continue to go to that religious faith or service or community. And I'm stammering here because what I want to say is that I think those are really great moments for you to rehearse lines in your head so that when that moment happens where Uncle Joe shows up and he reminds you that he's been reading the Ensign lately and it had an article about those who leave and it said something about those who leave and he wants to ask you about why you left. It's a great moment for you to have practiced something to say that kindly, softly, compassionately, and we should always start there, I think. I think there are moments that perhaps a more direct, more stark answer may be needed, but I think almost always we can start from a place of kindness and compassion, and I think there's a way to give the other person the message like, hey, I'm really here today for the connection to you and to the other people in this room that I love. And I'm looking to avoid conversations where I'm trying to convert you. And I want to stay out of conversations where I feel like someone else is trying to convert me. And I'm just hoping that the rest of the day today, we can just really enjoy each other as family and connect, because there's been some time that's gone by since we've seen each other. And I'd really love this opportunity to just appreciate you and to enjoy this time with everybody else in this room. And I think something like that will hit home so that the person backs away from what their agenda was at that moment, but without getting so offended that they actually double down or come in harder.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Number 5, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Now, this is hard for me. If I went across the street, people will laugh at this. I went across the street a couple nights ago, and my next door neighbor has bonfires multiple times a week. And it's all the people in the neighborhood. Our houses are all really close to each other. There's lots of people in this area, in this development. And it never fails. He starts a fire and 5 or 6, 7 people show up. Half the neighborhood is Mormon. And so I walk over. He asked me to come over. I walk over. We're standing in a circle, a bunch of guys. We're talking. I get there, and the first guy's having a conversation about how they found Noah's Ark, and Noah's Ark is real, and the flood is real. And I just looked over with a smirk on my face, and I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "How did they get all the pocket animals back to Australia? How did all the marsupials?" And he said something. He came up with some quick answer that wasn't logical or convincing, but it was the way he deals with a question like that. And so then I followed it up. I felt like, "Oh, you said that? Fine. I'm going to say the next thing." And I said, "Oh yeah, how did the penguins get off the boat and just waddle their way all the way back to Antarctica?" And everybody else there was chuckling, but the guy ended up within 3 minutes just leaving. He was like, "I got to go. I'm going home." If that's Thanksgiving, I just pissed off somebody in my family. And so I'll just note, some of us have a harder time with this. I'll raise my hand. But just because you're at an event with people who you both love and disagree with, that if they say something that is baiting you or hooking you into conflict, you don't have to do that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, I mean, there are plenty of spaces where you can go and debate that stuff, and you can have those conversations. This is one thing I'll say is, like, if somebody invites you into one of those conversations, remember that you aren't the only 2 people at that gathering, right? And the majority of people there really want to come for connection. And so if you get into a heated debate about stuff, you are creating a discord for everybody else. So remember that, remember why you're there, and recognize that you can back away. And I know that is really hard for you.
Yeah.
I'm always afraid of, like, if the missionaries come by, which they do a lot, by the way. The Mormon missionaries knock on our door a lot, and the neighbor across the street also has had the missionaries there. And every time I see him, I'm like, "Oh God, I hope Bill doesn't see him." Like, because I always feel like this sense of protection for them, because they're so young, and I think you would blow them out of the water. You have so much knowledge, and so I sometimes get concerned about that.
Yeah, I have a propensity to get into conflict conversations, debates. I don't want to call them arguments, because nobody's fighting. But if somebody wants to put their beliefs on me, I do want to push back with questions that sort of walk them into the absurdity of it. But as you point out, that's not what this is. This is Thanksgiving. This is Christmas. If you want to go debate things online in an online debate forum, go do it. But if you're at Thanksgiving, and you made this point, if you're at Thanksgiving and you and Uncle Joe are having a conversation and he's baiting you into an argument, and he wants to debate the church, he likes standing up for the gospel, and he doesn't get how you could have left, and he wants to try to deal with that. As you point out, you're not the only 2 there. There's a whole bunch of family here at Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner. If you make it some performance thing with you and him, now you're drawing everyone else into disconnection, and you and Uncle Joe have created a team effort at creating disconnection on a holiday when there should have been plenty of space for people to enjoy themselves and have connection with people they love.
Yeah.
All right, number 6, build in micro moments of regulation. The holidays hit your nervous system fast, so build in small, quiet resets. Feel both feet on the floor. Take one long exhale. Put a hand on the back of your neck. Or step outside for 2 minutes just to breathe. I think those are all great ones. These tiny moments help you stay grounded so you're not reacting from pure fight or flight.
Yeah, these are huge. And these are really easy to do, honestly. Like if you, again, remind yourself ahead of time that you're going to slow yourself down a couple times throughout the process and just come home to yourself. And one thing that's also helpful is if you can literally go into the experience as if you're just watching it for the first time. Like I'm going to be curious. I'm just going to observe. I'm just going to see how people are. And as I'm observing, I'm going to do it through this lens of mindfulness where I'm not judging anything, right? I'm observing, I'm taking in information, I'm writing data down. I'm getting an understanding of who these people are, but I'm going to erase everything I think I know about them and everything all the judgments I have about the whole scenario and just sit back and watch people. Because really, every single person is really doing their best to be a human. Like we're all trying so hard. And so when you can watch from that perspective, sometimes you pick up on things you never would have seen before. You understand people's insecurities. You see the different ways that they're armoring themselves because they feel vulnerable or they feel uncertain in this world. And you just see them differently. And so I think that's also a very regular thing. So anyway, being the observer, sitting there, kind of watching people. I've shared this many times. Just an easy thing is just orienting to the space in the room. Getting up and walking outside is really great too. Just taking a step outside and taking a few breaths and recentering yourself, reminding yourself of your intention, and then re-engaging when you're ready.
Yeah, and that will make a world of difference. And so, like the lines that you rehearse that we talked about earlier, I think it's also helpful to rehearse this to say, okay, you know, there happens to be from time to time these moments with my family where Aunt Jenny wants to bring church up and sort of try to influence my kids or whatever it is. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment too. But it's important, I think, to rehearse some of this beforehand. Hey, when these moments come up, I'm going to find a way to disengage from that thing and take a moment to myself or get my kids to go see grandpa's backyard or whatever it is, to step away for a moment so that, as you point out, you can take a deep breath, you can do some grounding exercise and get yourself at least somewhat out of lizard brain back into your frontal cortex, so that when you walk back into that house, you're dealing with whatever the situation that comes next from a much more grounded perspective, rather than being elevated, activated, and having our mind racing about what all these patterns of behavior mean, and what we sometimes think in our heads about what we'd like to do in these situations. It's better to take a moment, pause, and really check in with yourself and make sure that when you walk back in, you handle the situation in a way that you will later on feel was a responsible way to do it.
Yeah.
All right. The next one is know what you actually want from the day. Before you show up, ask yourself why you're going. What's the goal? Is it to enjoy yourself? Is it to survive? Is it to make a memory with the kids? Is it to support your partner? To avoid walking out completely drained? Maybe that's what you want. When you understand your why, the how becomes much easier and you stop letting emotion run the whole show.
Yeah. I think that's a great one. And also make a small goal. Like if maybe it's too much of a stretch to, go there and be non-activated and, be fully centered and curious and observant, whatever. Like that does take time. But what if the goal was to, I don't know, to stay centered enough that you don't get into an argument or you don't get reactive or that you don't leave completely drained. You know what I mean? Like have some small sort of goal that you have that feels doable, and then build from there. Then the next event, you can try a little, one other tool or one other way and see if you can shift your side of the dynamic in those family gatherings. So make it achievable, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe worst case scenario, maybe you are just trying to survive this family occasion. And like it says here, if you know the what you're trying to accomplish, now you can figure out what the how is to get there. So maybe for you, surviving means every time I show up at these family gatherings, I get bombarded with these things that are passive aggressiveness, that are missionary efforts, uh, trying to sort of work around me to get to my kids and teach them gospel things. If you know, like, hey, I just want me and my immediate family to survive this thing, then now you go like, how do I want to accomplish that? Okay, if I'm met with any of those things, here's how I want to respond. Because again, these are patterns that have showed up, almost certainly have showed up in your family over and over again. And if you go home from these things going like, oh my gosh, that was a disaster. Well, it's not only a disaster because Uncle Joe says what he says or Aunt Jenny says what she says, it's also a disaster because you react every time the way that you do. And so if you want this moment to be different, then you've also got to take some ownership of when it starts down that track, rather than doing the thing you've always done. You've worked out in your head like, hey, my goal is to survive this. And by surviving, it means that when my family members say these things, they're passive aggressive, I've got my worked out responses. I've got my worked out things I'm going to do to regulate myself. And so when something happens, I know what to say so that I say it in a way that's not disconnecting to the family experience. I've got a way to say it so that the other person, if I need to, does hear that I do have a boundary, but I say it in a kind, compassionate way that allows them to move on without their ego jumping in. And I have ways in which to ensure that my kids or my partner are also safe in these situations too. So if you are in a relationship and it's both you and your partner that are going to this occasion, I would suggest the two of you sit down and have a conversation around this so that both of you are on the same page about what do we do if this happens? What do we do if that happens? How do we handle this? It'll give you both a chance to sort of help and support each other too, so that one person is not sort of the front for all of that, and the other person can help sort of distract things from those patterns that normally happen. Anything else on this one?
Nope. I think that's awesome.
Great. So next one we've got is number 8, find an ally in the room. It helps to have someone there who gets it, even a little. A sibling, a cousin, your partner, someone who can give you a grounding glance, someone who can redirect wild conversation, someone to debrief with after. Humans regulate in pairs, use that instead of trying to muscle through the whole day alone. And before you say something, I'll just say, I sort of mentioned this already, but I mentioned it in the context of the person that you're getting in the car with to go to the event. Also, in most families, there is somebody else in the room who isn't in your home, but they're the cousin or the aunt or the uncle who is a bit of an ally. They either also don't want to see these old patterns show up, or they agree with you and disagree with the other folks in the family about that issue. And if you look for the ally and sort of connect that bond with them when you get there, it will allow, again, if you have somebody that you sort of know and trust that they see these moments too when they happen, if you have an ally in the room, they can often help buffer these things too.
Yeah. So this is really helpful. Like I've had many times when, I've had a person who I know understands what's going on. Maybe so-and-so, there's a person that's going off on some tangent, and you can just look across the room and make eye contact and just give each other a look that lets the other person know, like, I so get it, it can help to make you feel less alone and to just give you a little bit of comic relief sometimes.
Yeah. In some situations, it can be a sibling, it might be an in-law, but generally speaking, if you have someone in the room that has conveyed to you that they are an ally in some way, making some sort of connection to them before any of this stuff happens can often lead to that person just intuitively knowing that this is a moment where they can offer some support, either with a glance across the room or a distraction. Maybe they can say something that distracts the conversation onto something else. And so I think that's a big help. Okay, number 9, expect old patterns and don't shame yourself for them. And we talked about this before, but we're going to talk about it again. I think it's important. Family systems are powerful. They love pulling you back into old expectations and roles. So if you catch yourself getting irritated or slipping into old patterns, try not to pile shame on top of it. It's not failure, it's familiarity. When you expect some regression, you're more equipped to stay compassionate with yourself. And again, we said this at the beginning, family dynamics, these are it's almost a ritual, the way that we interact with each other. The things that mom says or dad says or brother or sister say, and how we always respond, the banter we have, how someone says a thing and we get defensive, or we say a thing and they get defensive. And those patterns show up over and over and over again. And so give yourself grace. Like, you may have done all the prep beforehand, had conversations with yourself, came up with lines, decided what your boundaries were, decided that you had set really solid, healthy internal boundaries. And you get to the event and the old patterns show up and you can't help but find yourself being reactive. It can happen. I almost want to say it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
And so don't shame yourself for them. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody triggers you like your family does. That's just your wounds originated in that family dynamic, and they get triggered so easily in the same family dynamic. So just, yeah, be easy on yourself and don't give up. You know, if this family event goes the way it's always gone, then you have another moment to sort of figure it out and try some other techniques. It's really okay.
Yep. And then the last one here, number 10, give yourself permission to leave early or protect your energy. The holidays aren't a test you have to pass. If your body says, I'm done, honor that. Leaving early isn't rude. Taking a break isn't dramatic. Skipping an event doesn't make you selfish. Sometimes protecting your energy or protecting the whole day is the wisest choice you make. And adulthood gives you the right to choose that, even in December. And as you noted in the very beginning, there may be situations where the healthiest thing you can do for yourself and for them is that you don't attend these family events, and that people should be given grace and validation for them choosing their own self-care, and that self-care being that they don't go to a thing entirely.
Yeah. And so what I'll say to that is, as people, there are people that are going to be new in their deconstruction process, or they're moving away from a certain system. And there are times in that process when you are deeply sensitive, when you haven't worked this stuff out fully, when you don't have the capacity yet to be to engage with people in a clear and grounded way. What I'll say is, get really honest with yourself and feel into what your actual capacity is, and don't push beyond it. There may be a period of time where you just can't engage with your family, and that's okay. So you take that time and you get really clear on yourself, and you figure all this stuff out, and then you can approach your family again later. Maybe never. Some people may have families that they never choose to re-engage with, and that's okay too. But if you ever get to the point where you feel settled enough in your decisions and who you are that you can re-engage, then you can do that. But until then, give yourself the space to not do it. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean you're bad. And what's hard too is some people have scenarios where their partner may want to engage with a family gathering, but they're not ready. And I know it can create a lot of strain in those situations. But one of the things you were saying in, I think it was know what you actually want from the day. And you were talking about, when people, like, sometimes the goal is just to survive. And I would say, if you are in survival mode, if you feel like the goal is just to survive a family engagement, then that's an indication that that is way over your capacity. And so maybe, again, if that's what's been happening for you, you give yourself some space.
Yeah. So maybe you leave early, maybe you don't go at all, but you don't have to endure it far beyond when you've had enough, when it's reached your tipping point. because all that's going to happen then is you're going to have resentment and regret, and you're much more likely to react to things in a way that you walk away from the experience frustrated with them for sure, but with yourself as well for the way that you showed up when those things happen. All right. Those are our 10 tips and tricks, but I thought it'd be fun, Teresa, if we pose some situations to you that come up in these moments, and I'll describe a situation. I'll tell you how unawakened Bill would like to respond, and then you can give whatever advice you'd like to. Okay. So
Okay.
before we jump back into the next part of that conversation, I want to pause for just a moment. A lot of what we're talking about in these episodes, trauma and the inner work to process it and to live our best lives, this is the kind of stuff that people don't know how to navigate on their own.
And if you're listening and realizing, wow, I could use some support with this, you are not alone. Bill and I both offer one-on-one coaching for people who are working through spiritual trauma, faith transitions, or just trying to reconnect with themselves in healthier ways.
And we've also created spiritual trauma support groups for people who want a safe space to process their experience with others who really get it.
If that sounds like something that would help you right now, you can find all the information for one-on-one support and our support groups at awakenandthrive.org.
All right, let's get back into it. There's the can you say the prayer moment. Now, this is when a believing parent or host asks you, knowing that you've left the religion or knowing that your kids have left. I've seen grandparents ask children of families who have completely stepped away, grandchildren, and I thought that was such a strange thing. But it's when a family member knows you've left the system and they want to bait you back in. They want to put a spiritual experience on you so that maybe you'll second guess your leaving and come back to the faith. So it's this pressure to perform old roles. And so they ask if you to say the prayer. And what my immediate thought is I want to fold my arms, close my eyes, bow my head. And then I want to say something like, Dear Heavenly Father, please bless Grandpa that he can recognize that some people don't believe in Mormonism and they just don't want to give prayers like this over the meal. And I want to do something like that. What do you think? Should I do something like that?
I mean, okay, I'll put it this way. I think that'd be completely fine if you have a family that has a really good sense of humor, right? Like if you know sort of where the lines are with your family. But really, I think the first thing that you need to do again is internal boundaries, being like recognizing like I can honor my own process and where I am, and I don't have to perform. And then you can just gently say like, thank you for asking, but I'm no longer comfortable giving a prayer or whatever it is. And then if they keep pushing, you may have to get more clear or, whatever you need to do. But yeah, giving a smart ass prayer, unless you have a family that really has a great sense of humor that would think it was funny. Maybe not.
Okay. How about the missionary moment gift, right? Like everybody got a Christmas gift that was meaningful to them. And you got a 12-month subscription to the church magazine. In that instance, what unawakened Bill would want to do is to notify that person in a snarky way, like, hey, you just gave yourself a gift. You chose to give me something that had to do with your motivation for what you wanted from this situation. That's not a gift at all. So what I ended up with something I'm going to throw in the trash. And I didn't end up getting a gift from you for Christmas in the least.
Yeah.
How do you think about the way I handled that?
That's you taking offense, right? And making that's you basically making a judgment about their intention and getting offended. So, I mean, that's okay. Again, I'm not going to judge anybody's reaction. I think that's funny. I mean, if you can just see the intention behind it and not allow it to be offensive, you know what I mean? Like, it's like whatever they gave you was because for some reason I don't know, I'm coming from the Mormon perspective. In a Mormon perspective, it could be that either somebody so desperately worries about your salvation that they want to get you back on the straight and narrow path, or you know what I mean? They feel like this is the thing that's going to sort of like nudge you back into recognizing how amazing the church is, whatever it is. It's coming from this place of deep care and concern. So if you can lean into that and just recognize like, okay, that's the intention behind this. I can, throw it in the garbage when I get home, whatever. That seems a more compassionate response.
How about when Uncle Joe says, so why don't you believe anymore? The interrogation at the Thanksgiving table or the interrogation around the Christmas tree as people are opening presents, a sibling or uncle uses the holiday dinner as a chance to grill you, the ex, whatever you are, about your faith transition. The unawakened Bill would want to tell him right there in front of everyone. I'll tell you, Uncle Joe, everybody listen up. Uncle Joe, I think the history of your church is bullshit. I think that the leaders of your church lie, and I think the harm that they do by trying to control people through shame and manipulation are a horrific way to try to control the masses. And for those three reasons, I simply don't believe in your faith anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a hard one to sort of walk away from, because I know there's a lot, again, a lot of people who've left the church because of all those reasons. I mean, you feel anger, you feel a lot of things towards the church, and that can bleed into the people who still believe in it and support a system like that, right? So I get the drive, I get the but again, this comes back to if you're sitting at the table with a bunch of your family members, like it's not just about you and Uncle Joe. It's about everybody else who's there. And so you have to have some respect for their experience. And so in that case, you could just say, this isn't the kind of conversation I want to have at the dinner table. I want to keep this focused on Thanksgiving. What else do you want to know about my life? Something like that.
Yeah, this might be the perfect moment for I'm here for connection and not for conversion. And so maybe some other time when it's just you and me, we can go to lunch and we can have that conversation. But tonight or for Thanksgiving or Christmas, I really would like to focus on just enjoying the people that I love, because it's been a long time since I've gotten to see all of you.
Yeah. All right. So just on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard would it be for you to say the second thing versus the first thing?
I think your advice is really good, and it's the advice that all of us should take. I don't know if I'm taking it. There's a little bit of a combatant in me, that if you instigate, if you push your stuff on me, I'm pushing my shit right back on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm just saying. But again, you reap what you sow. And if I show up that way and then nobody really enjoys my company and nobody really wants to connect with me, I shouldn't have to wonder why. So there's that. All right. The kids in the crossfire scenario. I've seen this happen. Believing grandparents tell your kids religious narratives behind your back. They bear testimony to your children in front of you, or they push for a blessing or a primary song performance. The unawakened me wants to just draw a stark line. Like, these are my kids. You had no right to do that. Stop making our family interactions about you trying to push your religious faith back on us. And from here on out, I have a boundary. If you do that, I have to step away and you won't have access to me or my kids. And it's your responsibility to figure out how you don't make these missionary moments, and you don't make you don't make my being out of the church and your being in the church a litmus test for whether we can be connected or not.
Yeah. And I actually don't think that that's terribly inappropriate. I think that's a really strong boundary and a strong response. But I think for some people that might make sense in their situation. I think if, I also know so many people, especially older religious people, who just are oblivious and their intention is really positive, but they just don't get it. And there are a lot of less abrupt ways that you can sort of intervene there. One is reminding yourself that, like, yeah, you do have the right to direct your children's spiritual life, and let people know that you're giving your kids the choice around this and you don't want to force them into anything. That's one thing. Or you could, conveniently have to leave at that moment. Oh, I'm so sorry, we can't stay for this. We really got to get home because of such and such, whatever it is. And this is another thing y'all can prepare for ahead of time, is to have the ready excuse when you have the moment where you need to leave. You've all rehearsed like what you're going to say or what you need to do or what you need to get home for. And, that's, one of these moments where you can sort of use it there. So I don't know. These things are really hard. That kind of thing's really hard. The involving your kids. I think that's something that a lot of parents feel very protective around. And so don't make yourself wrong. If you, I really, on this one, I really don't think there's any like super appropriate thing to say. I think you just got to do what you got to do.
Love that. And then the last one, the one comment too far trigger. A relative makes a passive aggressive remark about apostasy or morality, garments, modesty, family roles, garments being the underwear that Mormons wear. It lands like a punch in the gut. And I'll just say, if you've done this other work beforehand, you've come up with things you're going to say to get out of that conversation into a new conversation, you figured out ways to step away, to regulate. I'll just say that we all know of either people in our family or we know of other families where it's just so aggressive that even if you do all the right things to avoid stepping in those quagmires, that they're going to pull you into them no matter what. And I'll just say that I think there are moments where if you've tried the other things, nothing's working, and this person or these people are just determined to violate your boundaries and to drag you into that conflict. As you point out, I think the soft thing to do is just to excuse yourself, excuse your family, and you and your loved ones, just that's the end of the night for you guys. But I also think that there are moments, sort of like the children one from the situation before, where in the worst case scenarios, if someone is just not getting the message, that you may have to be very clear with them and express to them that this is not okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I keep coming back to this, but just keep coming back to your own internal boundaries where I was giving you an analogy that I still use this today. Again, because I've had some very, very critical family members in my life, and they would say things that would be so painful to me. And one day I just realized, like, I would walk away from the conversations with people or engagements with people, and I would feel like I was just so weighed down by all of their judgments and all of the shitty comments or the, passive aggressive things they would say. And then one day I just realized, like, wow, I've just been collecting. It's like people are, passing you their judgments, and you're just like grabbing them and putting them in your backpack and then carrying it around. And it was like, well, wait a minute. What if I don't have to actually carry that anymore? And I had a visualization that I would use where I would look at myself just picking up the backpack and putting it down and walking away from it, and recognizing that, like, their shitty comments and their passive aggressive judgments were theirs, and I wasn't going to carry them anymore. I wasn't going to continue to take them with me. And every time I felt it come up again, I would pick the backpack off in my mind and set it back down. And that was my way of creating an internal boundary with those judgments. But when you do have someone who just keeps coming at you and is being incredibly aggressive, that's your moment to walk away. Like, that's where, again, you don't have to engage in any kind of mean behavior, but you can have a really firm boundary where you say, that's not appropriate. I'm no longer going to engage in this conversation. It's time that we need to go. Thanks for, inviting us, whatever it is. And then you just leave, and you can walk away feeling intact and recognize that you didn't escalate things. And then whatever wounds you may be feeling afterwards, you can go attend to those, let yourself feel, process, vent with somebody else, but knowing that you didn't leave something toxic behind, and you didn't engage with that person and sort of blow it up.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I'll just say that when those kinds of situations happen, where you've got that family member who just doesn't let it go, and no matter what messages are given, I think there comes a point where you just have to arrive at the conclusion that there really isn't anything you could say that would have that person, that particular kind of person, go like, oh, I see what I did there. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. No, those folks are almost always going to be uber defensive. They have justifications in their mind for why their behavior is allowed and why it's you that's the problem. I've encountered this before. I've had the unhealthiest of treatments to me by those who remained in the faith towards me who left. And it didn't matter how I tried to articulate or express to them my boundaries and why they hurt me. They had no ability, zero, to be able to see what it was they were doing to me and to make any sort of amends for it. So as you point out, it probably doesn't get you anywhere to engage the conflict. The best thing you can do is to step away. And as you point out too, that's not easy. When you get home, you may spend a day or two crying, maybe longer. You may need time to sit and process feelings that are just tons of anger. There are really normal responses to the situation, and having to be the adult in the room and walk away from it means you're the one who has to deal with your feelings when the other person has tons of mechanisms that put walls around their feelings and protect them from ever being accountable or dealing with them. So that's the work of being an adult, is leaving that kind of experience and spending time processing what you should have never had to have felt in the first place.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said of the fact that being able to objectively look at your relationships and recognize that you may not be able to get the things you want from these people. Like it's just not going to be possible. And when you arrive at that acceptance, behind it is a lot of grief and a lot of disappointment. And so sometimes people need to sit with that even before they engage with family members, or sometimes after the interaction, right? Well, there's so many times that we'll be like, well, maybe this time, maybe if I do this, or maybe if I approach it this way, or if I say this the right way, then I'll get what I really want. Then they'll see it. Then they'll understand. I'll have the validation I need. There are just certain people that you're never, ever going to get that with. And so there comes a time when, yeah, you have to sort of face that and then grieve the loss of what you hoped could be or what should have been. And it's painful. It's really painful. But when you can move through that and honor that grief and meet yourself, there's a peace that can come afterwards. And then you can sort of just accept that person as they are and also accept yourself as you are, and recognize that there are things that you can provide yourself that you hope for from someone else, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I picture a lot of listeners to this. They're going to get to Thanksgiving later this week. They're going to get to Christmas here in another month. And they're going to be around family. Some people are in the church, some are out of their faith. And these things are going to come up. And they're going to picture Bill on one shoulder and Teresa on the other. And I'm just going to tell all of you right now, don't listen to the Bill on this shoulder. Listen to the Teresa over here. And I think it will create opportunities for you to navigate old patterns in completely new ways. And when those happen, something magical happens. And it may not be perfect. Things may not always go right. But you get the opportunity, and so does the other person, to have an entirely new experience.
Yeah.
And so that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I want to say this. I have done, and I still have more work to do, but I've done a lot of work in the last few years, especially around my family. And I will say that I really love and appreciate my family. They are the same as they've always been. We, like I've just gotten to the point where I've learned to accept people for who they are. And in doing so, I have gotten to see, like really truly see and recognize the incredible strengths of the people in my life that I wouldn't have seen if I kept focusing on trying to get this thing from them that they just couldn't give me, and realizing that it was enough as it was. And I don't know, I feel free in that, and it makes interactions so much more pleasant. And I feel like I can be more genuine and show up as I truly am and allow people to be who they truly are. And it's changed a lot of things for me. So I know that it's possible, but I went through years of messiness and years of frustration and anger and disappointment. And twisting myself up every time I would have these interactions. And then I don't know, there was a point when something just shifted and changed for me. So don't give up on it. But also know that there are certain people that aren't worthy of your effort and work. And know when to call a relationship and know when to continue to invest in one.
All that is great advice. Folks, I hope that this episode has been helpful to you. I hope that in your holiday get-togethers with friends and family, that you've got the tools and resources to be able to avoid the old patterns of conflict and some of the things that family do to sometimes irritate us, but also keep in mind that we do things that probably irritate them too. And hopefully this was a big help to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those below, and please like and subscribe. Hey, before we wrap up today, can we ask you a quick favor? If you're enjoying these Almost Awakened conversations, it would mean a lot if you'd head over to the Almost Awakened podcast YouTube channel and hit subscribe.
Yeah, we are slowly moving the show over there because it helps people who are looking for this kind of content actually be able to find it. And it keeps the YouTube algorithm from getting confused with all the Mormon-specific stuff on the other channel.
Exactly. Subscribing over there makes a real difference in helping this project grow. So if you haven't done it yet, just take a second, search Almost Awakened Podcast on YouTube and click the subscribe button.
Thank you so much for helping us make this community easier for people to find. We really, really appreciate it.
Any last words from you, Teresa?
I just want to say thank you to people for listening, and that we wish you a peaceful and healthy holiday season.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Almost Awakened podcast. For more tools, resources, and real talk about conscious living, visit almostawakened.org. That's almostawakened.org, your resource for waking up